Dr. Smith taught it, and he was a very big advocate for PDK. And so that's part of the reason why I joined. And throughout the several, different meetings that I've gone to, I've gotten to know a lot of educational leaders from my district a little bit better. When they see you at those events, they kind of make a personal connection to you because it's kind of big, so I don't always see them in my everyday working. But then you also get to meet different leaders from other districts and do some networking that way and get to know people in that respect, kind of with all the school boards and things like that. So that would be a good opportunity. We also have a couple other meetings coming up. In March, the date is to be determined, but we meet with the UNL chapter of PDK. It's usually out at the Ashland Country Club. And last year, our speaker there was Dr. Kolowski, Senator Kolowski, I should say, because that's right when the legislature is in session. And so he gave us some really good information about the different educational bills that were being run through and what he was trying to do with one of his bills. And then we also have one in May where we give out scholarships to some of the local high school students, and we give out awards to some of the local teachers and things like that. So something else that comes with your membership is a subscription to the Phi Delta Captain, one of our magazines. This is a magazine that I've actually used a lot in my coursework throughout the EDL program. Every issue that I've gotten has been really, really helpful. Each of them are kind of just on a different topic, and a lot of them have different legislative things. Some of them, I know if you're from Iowa, they have some Common Core kind of things in them as well. But even, beyond that, being in Nebraska, there's a lot of applicable articles that I've found that have really related to some of the coursework that we've been doing. So I've used almost every one of these, and at least one per class that I've taken. So even just a subscription to that, I think is kind of worth the money as well. So I will leave some applications with Dr. Kaiser.
Leave them right there on the table, and I can pick them up at break.
Perfect.
Now, there's really two reasons that I know of that this is helpful to you. One is who's there. When you go into the room, the people that are there are the people that are in the know, that are either like you, aspiring leaders, or the current leaders. And so you may be meeting her today, and you say, well, she's not the superintendent. You don't know, next year she might be, because it's the people that are doing this that are also the becoming ones, I mean, I can remember seeing Dr. Sutphin at those meetings when he was a doctor, much less superintendent. And the other reason is some of the supports that they give, whether it's their website, there's one scholarship they give that's one of our graduates.
Mm-hmm.
It's somebody in this program. They have monies available for children of graduate members. And
Dr. Sutphin's son actually got one last year.
And so, and then the materials that they provide in terms of the magazines and so forth. It is worth your time, and it isn't that big of a commitment, nor is it that big of a financial or time requirement that it's something you ought to think about as being worth your time now and then down the road.
I was also going to say that as a student, you basically get half off your membership because I signed up and it was like $58.
Oh, I don't know if you get the student membership though. Did you sign up?
I got it.
I got
Okay.
it too. So
Yeah, I think
Not
it's
fair, I didn't. They told us, when I signed up 2 years ago, they had told us that we didn't get that. Why, that's something I should know though.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But you're still a student, maybe you still should.
Yeah, I should. It's $98 without the student discount. So, I mean, really honestly, that's not terrible for what you're getting with
And
the
you can always
subscription.
come to the first meeting or two without making any commitment and see if that's right for you.
And tomorrow would be a great opportunity for that. And even the one in January with all of the superintendents, if you know a member, you can ask them to RSVP you and come to that one as well to kind of try it out.
The RSVP comes through our office as well.
Mhm.
So that's another place where you want to make a connection with it. Our graduate assistant, Andrea, I don't know if you know her, is one that keeps the RSVPs. So you can't fall out of it. So.
I have class at 7:30, so I'll leave these.
All right.
I can look at too. And then,
Okay.
what time are you guys done? Because I can just come up down.
Yeah, I'll drop it by either stats or, I think I'll give it to Dr. Williams.
Okay, yeah, because that's where we're gonna.
That's what-
Yep.
All right, thank
Perfect.
you so much.
Hi, you're welcome.
Now, you're gonna see tonight that, you don't have a handout that goes slide by slide with what I'm doing, because different people are gonna be interested in different parts, so I gave you some pieces of things. And I also gave you some things that I'm not even gonna refer to, because you're gonna look at it and see if it's helpful to you. One of the important things, if you don't have handouts, they're in the box.
I have them. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
While we were taking care of like all the business, is it possible, I don't know if you have this planned, are you gonna talk, like, I was a little confused as to what's due today, so I did the web
Thank you.
Okay.
What's due today is specifically, it's the last time that I'm gonna see development plans. And I've seen most of them already. I'm caught up through the 25th, and thank you for, I was supposed to say that. What I see tonight is a commitment. It could be a ripped out page out of an envelope where you wrote me 3 sentences and stuck it in there. It could be 3 pages where you've typed out and said, hey, this is it, what are you thinking about? It could be an outline, you think this is big. Whatever you give me, that's what I'll give you feedback on, you see? And so if you just give me 3 sentences where I just kind of know the topic, then I might say, hey, have you read this? Have you looked at that? If you give me references, I might say, this is great. And did you know that ASCD has a whole issue on this year? Or if you give me the first few pages, I can say, you know what, you're on the right route with this, that type of thing. What I'm just wanting is, I don't want people to get to after Thanksgiving and go, oh my gosh, this paper's due next week, and I was gonna do it over break and I didn't, and you know what kind of paper that turns out to be, and that's not what you want to be putting yourself through at that time either. So what I'm looking for is a commitment. There is no grade, there is, whatever you give me, that's what I'll give you feedback on.
Okay, and
If
so
you give me nothing, that's what kind of feedback you're gonna get to.
the final version of this development plan is for when?
I need it this week. But at the end of this week, if I see, I'm still on the 25th. So if it comes in the day after tomorrow, I'm probably still gonna be in that grading loop. But by the time I get to the weekend, I think I'm gonna be out of development plan grading loop, I hope.
Okay, so we should
I
have
hope.
a final complete paper for you by the end of this week.
I'm certainly hopeful.
And
I'm
then
very hopeful of that.
There was like an outline or partial paper
That's what I'm
of the
saying, whatever it is you want.
action research, or the leadership, the critical issue.
Right, whatever you
So
wanna
2
give me.
papers.
Yep. The one is formal, it's a final draft,
Okay,
final time I'm seeing the plan.
okay,
It's the first whatever
of the critical issue.
of the issue research paper.
Okay.
And that one's due anytime this week as well? The
Anytime this
outline
week, yes.
one.
Again,
We can just
when
email it.
when I get to next week, I'm hoping to be on to other things. And so that would be helpful to you and me both to have that crossed off.
And if we have a grade for it already,
You've got a grade for it, it's done. Woo-hoo. I also should say your test is in there. 10 points is full points. If you got the 10 full points and you got the extra credits too, you got 11 points. Now what are those 11 points or 6 points or whatever it is you got, what does that mean? This class is worth 100 points altogether. You get all the rest of the points, even if you got 6 points, that means you're 4 points down. You're still way in A land. But if you turn in the next thing late and do poorly on the next thing, just get your next, so look at your other points with that. Every time you come here, you're getting 2 points, and so, by the way, no, the next test is not like this test. I give it for a couple of reasons. One is the beginning part, I want you to kind of have those terms so that when somebody says to you, Hershey and Blanchard, you think willing and able and you're able to use it. That type of thing. Types of power, you think, oh, well, should I do coercive or should I be, do something where I'm trying to earn their respect and have them have referent power to me. Some of those ideas need to resonate through and they will be continued. Those same ideas will come up in the case study that we're going to do later on and the inbox we're going to do at the end of the semester. So it isn't like learn it for today, forget it for tomorrow. That was knowledge based so that you could come back in. The next stuff we're doing is very much like the last page where there was the story about Myra. So look and see how your points came out with that. If your points came out great with that, you're on the pathway for what we're going to do next, which is apply these ideas. Okay? You have questions about the test. You're going to fold it before you put it back into your, write on it whatever you want to write. You're going to fold it when you put it back in your folder for me. If you don't have questions on it, you're going to leave it open and put it back in your folder for me. It does not go home. It goes back in the folder. Okay. All right, now my brain's on the right place. Thank you for stopping me when I needed to. I'm so excited about getting into the change stuff because it's one of the 3 favorite topics that I talk on. Change management is viable and interesting whether we're talking to people in schools, in hospitals, in military, in government. Nobody ever hires you to make things be the same. We aren't gonna elect the next governor to do what the last governor did, or we'll just reelect them. When people expect that, there's an expectation when you walk in as a leader that some things are going to change. And by the way, if they don't continue to change, they're changing anyway. They are decaying. It's like having that bright and shiny apple. You get it to be ripe, and you think, okay, now I'm here, I got it. But unless you continue to make it into applesauce or something, you're going to have a rotten apple pretty soon. So things continually change. That's a constant in our philosophy about leadership, is that you're constantly managing change, that there's enough of it that you're viable and excited and things are going well, and not so much of it that people are going, oh my word. And sometimes you can't help that. Sometimes it goes faster than you want it to, and sometimes things, it's like you're trying to pull them through pull the wagon through the mud, type of thing, trying to get change to happen. So I've got a lot of things here tonight that I want to share with you about change management. And what my framework is a little book called Change is Good, You Go First. And it is from that Simple Truth company, and I'm not selling it for any reason, but if you like some of the pictures and some of the stories and stuff that I tell, quite a few of them come directly out of that book, because change has a lot of different focus and a lot of different ways of framing it. I'm going to give you a few of them tonight, and a few of them in your handout for next week as well, because next week when you're online doing this, you're going to be looking at organizational leadership. How do you lead an organization? And all of this change stuff should kind of thread through leading an organization. We like change. In fact, we're addicted to change. If I want to go out and I say I have a new shampoo, in that commercial, one of the things I'm going to say is new and improved, right? Yeah, they do it all the time. We think changing things makes things better. Well, changing things makes things different. We hope that we can move to make them better. But we're really kind of addicted to this change idea. And one of the things that when I said about there's too much change in education, we don't wait for change to take roots before we say, oh, got to do something different. That's not working. We're moving people through. I can remember very plainly as the teacher that every year there was like a new professional development, and then now we're going to do it this way. Oh, now we're going to do it this way. And so pretty soon we became change resistant. We'd sit in the back row and kind of go, yeah, tell me the ones for this year, and I'll write that report, and next year you'll give me the new flavor of the month, and off we go. So we have to be careful about, in leadership, being addicted to change, to get up and say, here's the new and improved. I can remember very plainly a principal standing in front of the faculty and saying, here is the new lesson plan form. It is so wonderful. This is the one that we will be using in this district for the next 25 years. We didn't use it for the next 25 weeks. So guess what happens the next time when she stands up and says, here's the new lesson plan form? So you have to watch when you're addicted to say, oh, it's great, oh, it's wonderful, that everything continues to change. And everything has its pluses and minuses. And it's always easy to go after the low-hanging fruit, the stuff that's simple to do, to say, look what we changed. Most schools change yesterday's problems. I see, I can remember, I'm of the age, I can remember when computers came into the schools. And it shocked the teachers and it shocked the students. I mean, they'd never seen a desktop computer before. Computers were something that you saw in great big rooms down in factories. You know, they were huge. And so when we started to have computers, we thought, how are these children going to be able to interact with these things? And we started teaching them programming in 3rd and 4th and 5th and 6th grades. And we didn't need to do that. That was our problem of having to adjust to computers. The kids were like, hey, and just went and did it, you know. We were the ones that really needed to learn how to make the programs that were going to improve the education, not the children. We were solving yesterday's problems, ours, with today's students. And it's oftentimes we see a problem today. Oh, you know what? The people going out and going to their first year of college, they don't know how to do this and that. So we're going to put that into the 2nd grade curriculum. Of course, by the time those 2nd graders are ready to go to college, the need is probably going to be somewhere else. The job that 2nd grader is going to have hasn't been invented yet. It is also typical for us to rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic. In other words, we don't look at what the problem really is. We fix problems that don't need to be fixed because we're addicted to the change. Oh, look at all the change we're doing. But we don't really go after what's causing the ship to sink. The terminology, and this is probably something you should put down in a margin somewhere. There's 1st order change and there's 2nd order change. 1st order change is incremental, small, step by step. And there are times that that's what you want to do. 2nd order change is deep and systemic. 1st order change would be to take a school district that had a certain math textbook and have them go through the process and order the new and improved textbook from another company or the same company. 2nd order change would be saying, do we even need a textbook? Do we need, you know, how are we going to deliver this curriculum? Are we going to use technology? Are we going to, you know, and 2nd order change doesn't happen very fast, but it happens. You know, I mean, the middle school used to look exactly like a high school, only miniature. Junior high, high school. Over time, the model of middle school has changed. Systemically, not just how many hours you go, you know, to what teacher or that type of thing. The whole philosophy has changed. A lot of times we don't notice when that deep change happens. And that's one of the things I'm going to ask you to do tonight, is to think about what are the big, deep changes that we want to bring up to the level of awareness so that we're doing it something worthwhile instead of rearranging deck chairs while the ship goes down. Now, I said we're addicted to change, but the addicted is to change everybody else. They don't like it when it's they that have to change. You don't like it when you have to change. It's really interesting to get rid of something old and outdated. Back in my very young days as a teacher, we took attendance by having a card that we wrote the names of the children who were absent on the card, hung it on the door of our classroom. A child walked around, picked up all the cards, took it down to the secretary. The secretary wrote down all the names of all the children that were absent, called all their moms, and that was the way we took attendance. A lot of times it was 11:30 before the child's mother got called because that's how long the system took. They said, no, we're going to put this onto the computer. Well, we all hated that old system of writing it on the card. And being a 6th grade teacher, one of my children had to leave my class every day to traipse around and pick up the silly little cards and miss instruction for that. And, we hated the system. It was so outdated. We were like, and so you would think as an administrator bringing that in, that everybody would be, whoa, look at this, immediate. Immediately the office knows who's not here. They can call right away. No kids walking around with no keeping these goofy old cards. Isn't that exciting? It's going to be great. At that time, at that moment, that is when I think it's in my bag. That's when all of a sudden they started to love that old system. We can go back in time. If it's on the computer, we may lose the data. It's electronically. It may go away. They were mourning something they hated. The mistake the administrators made was they also started to hear this, we may lose the data if we don't have the old cards. So guess what they did? Both. That we had to put it on the computer so their mothers could get called right away, and the child still had to go pick up the cards as well. Yeah. And you're like, why? If it's good, Well, handling change is not easy. And it's hard to be the one that says, we're going to stop doing something or we're going to start doing something and get all the cats that you're herding to do it in such a way that it works. So got some points here for you to help you with it. First of all, the bottom line is when you're going after a change, whether it's a tiny change, we're going to start school 5 minutes later. Yeah, 5 minutes sounds like a tiny change. You would be surprised how many people and how many systems are just affected by that. Like every handbook you have has to go in, and every website and everything. It all ripples around. But if you believe in it, if that 5 minutes matters for some reason, if you can have a cause that people can rally behind, and there's a reason why we're doing it, then you have something to talk about. When they changed that system to from cards to computer, what they should have been leading with was student safety. That if there's a child that's missing, we will know it hours earlier than we knew before. Now, teachers believe in child safety. They don't believe in also putting it on the card, but that's outside of it. But on the other hand, the other belief we're talking about is the leader has to believe in the people. In that attendance card, you had to believe that the teachers were going to put the right data on the computer and get it in there, and that the office was going to save it in the correct way. Because when you didn't believe, when you made them continue to do the cards, you were also saying to the secretary and the teachers, we don't believe that you can do the new way. And if the office doesn't believe they can do the new way, you've just lost the belief of your people as well. In your small handout, there's a page that talks about Cotter's 8 steps. And you're also going to get that article about Cotter's change. And that is probably one of the most used frameworks for using complex change that we have. And so let me pull up where I think that thing is. I think it's in this back of this one. It's the back of this one. This is Cotter's 8 steps to making a change successful. Now, I'm not going to think about complex change if it's something like we're going to start using blue ink instead of black ink in our ballpoint pens. You know, I'm thinking of in terms of large and complex change. That it has problems. It's going to take time. This is a situation when you have those kind of complex changes. If you can step back and look at it, plan ahead of it as you're in it, instead of just trying to do the next thing. Again, have a plan, and at the end of it to say, did we succeed? If you don't know what you were trying to change, you don't know whether you ever succeeded at it or not. So these are the steps that Cotter uses, and I will refer to periodically tonight. The first one that Cotter talks about is creating a sense of urgency. We know that if it's a choice of changing or not changing, people will not change. First of all, if we say, you know what, we're going to teach science in a different way next year. We've got new technology, we've got new fields that we're going to put some biomechanical things in with this. We're going to, instead of being excited, those teachers are not going to want to change, not only because it sounds like more work. Oh, great, all my lesson plans that I've had for the last 20 years don't work anymore. But it also has an implied statement, what you've been doing isn't as good. And if you don't address that, then there is immediate resistance, because it's like you're thinking I'm doing it badly, and people start to protect their turf and protect themselves. So creating a sense of urgency is the idea that if you don't change, things are going to get worse. He wrote a book called Our Iceberg is Melting, about a bunch of penguins living on an iceberg, and this it's a little cutesy story, but he uses his 8 steps through that. And in this, the penguin that notices that the iceberg is melting can't get the others to care about it, because there's plenty of ice. There's always been plenty of ice. And so he had to go out and find a way to get them worried about what was going on. So he measured the ice and so forth. He did some things to make it noticeable to the rest of them that they better be paying attention to it. We create a sense of urgency most easily through fear. And yet, that doesn't last. Look at the issues people have had to go there trying to get us to do things different in our lives because of global warming. When global warming first came out, there was a lot of noise and controversy and so forth over it. And yet people are looking around going, oh, well, it's okay, I don't see, In some ways, there was too much of a sense of fear with that when the bad thing didn't happen as fast or as, the best time to sell earthquake insurance is right after the earthquake, right? Because before it, there isn't the sense of afterwards, people have the fear for it, but before they don't. When people try to sell stuff out of fear, it works for a short period of time. Oh, if you don't do this, I can remember when the desktop computers came out, that was the commercials for Christmas. Here's little Johnny with his encyclopedia. He's not going to go to college. Here's little Mary with her computer. A+, They were selling them out of fear. The parents were like, if I don't get this for my child, well, most of the computers at that time, the kids were playing Oregon Trail all day, that kind of stuff anyway, so I was like, buy the encyclopedia, But the fear doesn't last. So a sense of urgency needs to be why this is important, why we need to do it, but you can't overhype it or you will lose people and you will lose their trust. Okay. Another good point about starting a campaign for change is to preach to the choir. There are people that already believe in what it is that you're going to be doing. They've been doing it. You know, that they've just been waiting for a chance to speak about this or try it out or do whatever it is. And they're the ones who can start to show what's going on and show how this is working, how it will be successful. Don't worry about making everybody believe in what you're doing when you start out on your new endeavor. I mean, if you're going to start putting one-to-one computers in a building where they've never been before, put them with the people that are excited about it, because then you'll be able to see that growth with those people. Wow, look what those kids did. Look what that teacher did, that kind of thing. And that's not the end of it, because if you just stay with them, it's like, well, that's the techie people over there. They can, you know, I can't do that, but he's techie, so he can. But it's a good start.
In a case in point, my school we have like 14 smart boards in our school. 3 of our teachers use them. The other ones are sitting in the library because nobody wants to use them nor knows how to. They just threw everything at everybody and said, use it, and they kind of did, but those of us who like it, were passionate about it, used it, but everyone else fell by the wayside.
So that's the second step. The first step of throwing it out there and getting the people that are excited about it. You don't want to say, oh, you know, only 3 out of 14 teachers are doing this. 3 out of 14 teachers are doing it, and that's where you want to go. Don't not go after those people. 1 out of every 10 employees that you have is the influential person. If you can sell that one, they can sell the other 9. You don't have to sell all 10. So you go after the influential ones. Of the teachers that are not using the smart boards, if you could break in and get one of those to see the light, you find who the influential one in that group is, you could get a tipping point and then tip the rest of them to the place where the ones that weren't doing it were feeling kind of outcast and alone. Talked a little bit already about, come on, there you go, about the cards and the computer and how we keep, you know, we're going to do this and this. And by the way, we're going to do the old thing that doesn't work anymore because we're all going to do it. We hold on to things too often. And your brain can only hold so many things. And so you have to kind of figure out what those things are that are going to get you to success and let some of the other stuff go. Because all things aren't equal, and you can't just do more and more and more. You've all lived under that kind of a system where there's more. Okay, now there's, and with that, and one of the successful ways to say we're going to do new and is to say, but we are no longer going to do old that is outdated. If you can give with one hand and take with the other, then you can be more on the get rid of the baggage that you don't need so much. Here's the Pareto principle. It's Pareto. This guy was an economist in Italy. And what he noticed was that if he looked at all the land in Italy, that 20% of the people owned 80% of the land. It doesn't have anything to do with 80 plus 20 equals 100. It doesn't. It's not an add-up thing. That 20% of the people broke 80% of the laws. Of the lawbreakers, it was the same people over and over. Of the people that were wealthy, it was the same people. That what the Pareto principle is that there are critical few things that if you know what these things are, whether they are people, whether they are resources, whether they are answers to questions, whatever they are, if you know that 20%, you're able to solve 80% of the issue, what's going on. What the problem with that is those 20% things are usually the things that we don't really want to hit face on. So if I'm the assistant principal, and these are all the things I have to do in my day. These are all the things I have to do in my day. And one of the things I have to do is I have to make PowerPoint slides for the next event that we're going to do. Okay, so I got my PowerPoint slides here. And another thing that I have to do is I have to walk the halls and see that the halls are nice and straight, you know, that locker doors are closed and kids aren't out where they aren't supposed to be. I have all hall duty, that type of thing. And you know what? I get back to my office and then there's all those emails, you know, all those people that need to have my email, you know, those important emails I need to be doing. When I get that done, well then I gotta make some emails to people as well. And I can feel really good about myself. I got my PowerPoint done, I got the halls checked, I did my emails, I did my lunch duty. Look at all the things I accomplished during this day. And those things are in my solutions. I have a better school because I did those things, but they aren't the critical things. My critical things may be having a fierce conversation with a teacher that's not doing what they're supposed to be doing. My 20% may be down here going in and having a discussion with the leadership team about some changes that need to be made in the schedule. Or things that are deep and heavy and tough, we put to the end of our day because I may work all day and not check this thing off. I may work all week and not be able to check this thing off. But if I don't pay attention to this thing that's down here, this fierce conversation, this whatever, if I got that solved, if I got that teacher on track, if I got that schedule fixed, whatever those things are, the solutions will outweigh. It's worth my time to do it because, you know what? I won't get so many emails if I have that teacher, that fierce conversation with that teacher. Over here, I won't get so many unhappy parent emails and calls because I fixed what's going on with the teacher. So the important thing what this is saying is lead with the stuff that's going to make a difference. Not the stuff that's easy, but the critical few things that's going to matter. And by the way, you can read other places where they talk about 90-10 or 95-5, that really there's 5%. That if you can find that really 5% of important things, you can solve 95% of what's going on. I've never been quite that lucky, but I really do believe the 80% bit, that if I can get, 20% is 1 out of 5 things I do in a day. If I can do that most important thing and not the easiest thing, I can solve 4 out of the 5 problems that I would have had otherwise. And that's what Pareto's really telling us. In your handout, you see in the middle of it, this thing that looks like this big arrow, looks like this. Force field analysis is something that's done in many, many fields, in many different professions. When they're trying to figure out why isn't it working? How can I make it work better? So what you do in force field analysis is, first of all, you articulate what it is you really want. You see if I go back to my little story about the attendance business, what did they really want? Well, they wanted an attendance plan that was effective and efficient. It did what it was supposed to do, and it didn't take up instructional time. Okay, so I would write up there, have an attendance system that's effective and efficient. Okay, I didn't say, let's use the computers because we got them. Let's find a way to use them. Very often people write the wrong thing and what their desired change is. I can build onto, let's be more effective and efficient. I can sell people on that. I can't sell them on, we bought these computers, let's find a way to use them. Then underneath there, what are the things that are driving this thing forward? Okay. So for example, one of the things that as a change that I have worked on for the past 3 years, is moving this program to a hybrid format. Now, I don't know how well I'm doing it, but I'm doing it, and I'm not doing it alone. The whole team is coming with me, but I was the first. I was doing that, trying it out, seeing how it was going. And so what was that I wanted? I wanted to have a master's program that was more teacher friendly, that had some opportunities that you didn't have to drive out here as often, but you still got the rigor of a leadership program that you just can't get by taking it all online. That's what I wanted. What things helped drive that for me? Well, one of the things that helped drive it was technology came up. We've been talking about that kind of stuff for years, but the Blackboard system was awfully clunky. And it was so boring to take it at online class because you were always sitting there on discussion board and stuff. So one of the driving forces is the technology was coming up and pushing, there was cheap, easy ways for us to make this thing happen. Another thing was that we had competitors that were doing completely online programs. So what are the things that are pushing this thing forward? On the other hand, what are the things that kept it from happening? Well, one of the things that kept it from happening is we had a huge amount of successful placements in people getting leadership positions. 50% of the leaders in the metropolitan area have a degree from UNO. And so when I say we're going to change our program, what they're afraid of is we're going to lose that. They're all, oh man, you're going to lose that prestige of being this high, We also had faculty who said, do what on a computer? You mean I don't get to stand up and do but I have to lecture, I have to look in their faces and see them to do. I can't sit there and talk to a machine, which isn't fun, by the way. I have to imagine that you're all laughing. Yeah, I should have a laugh track, but that would be really corny for you on the other end. That would be horrible. Anyway, so what do I need to do to make this thing happen? I either have to strengthen the driving forces and push it, or I have to lessen the restrainings. So one of the restraining was I had faculty that really didn't want to do it, but I did, so I started. I could make myself do it. And I could show them how, look at this now, next week I have an online class and I'm getting feedback from every student, but Tuesday night I'm doing something else and so were they. Let's try it. With somebody sitting, and if you don't like my topic, change it, I don't care. With somebody sitting close to you, or if you want to do it by yourself, you're welcome to. Look at your little arrow thing. And let's say you decided to ask the staff to change how they do parent-teacher conferences. It could be time, it could be format, it could be how often, it could be you're going to do online conferences, whatever you want to think about. Some way you want to do parent-teacher conferences differently. I thought perhaps right about now you'd all like to do them differently than where you've been. What are the driving forces for your change? And what are those things that are stopping it from changing? And then you think about how can I make the driving forces stronger and how can I make the barriers weaker. We are also going to break at this time, so we are going to be reporting back some thoughts we had about the process, not necessarily the answer, but the process of using this model, where it works and where it doesn't. Okay, I'm not going to ask you what you did with parent-teacher conference. I'm going to ask about using the model in 7 minutes. So let's do this for only about 3 minutes, and let's do breaking for about 4 minutes. And you may choose with your people that you're working with whether you're going to break first and then do it, or vice versa.
How do you feel about knocking this out?
Obviously,
I guess the driving.
allows for staff development if you're doing your
So my fiance says she's elementary, she has 2 elementary, 2
Thursday from 8 to 8, and then Friday, so that's how we always did it. I'm trying to do it, but it is, you know, so you have to see them, and then you have to get in contact with the students, and you know, send them a letter, you know, say that the times that work for them, and then try to you know, and then also like, you know, just keep in contact with them, make sure that they're fine as well, so. But like this year, I have to I had 4 students not show up, not show up for sure. If I told my staff that I should like the online or whatever, I think, for driving
So I think,
and then also, I think what I'm really discussing for my trial is all the restrictions. So we have to figure out some way for those that don't have computers, you know, or have a smartphone or computer, but there is cases where they don't have computers. You know, because yeah, and I do have a circuit here because everything doesn't have a smartphone, you know, you know, so then I just like, you know, keep another information, you know, like, there are no students, you know, so that like, yeah, but I think, you know, the biggest driving force would be that, you know, like, yeah, because, you know, you have those years that you try to call 3 or 4 times that will return your phone back and stuff, so you can see the emails, you know, yep, and stuff like that, yeah.
I think it's hard for us to. I just talked to you, we just had a meeting.
So then you guys just said, like, this is a letter telling them about the website.
We have
Okay.
well, we have that verified, we have to create a team, like a team. And also, I just did there. And then created a website that had everybody else. So like,
kinds of things I did.
And then like, right.
It worked out pretty well. She was just like, it's not so tight, so like, I'm not gonna talk about your my students. So, I really like, that's why I was like, so it's like, I just kind of floated right over the other studies, so we talked to her and showed us the
Today, it was, we're in extremely special. So it's like 1 o'clock, and I'm like, I think well, we swapped, so the supervisor, he launched, and we swapped so much. We did all day today.
Yeah, you might as well take it.
Now I'm like,
4 hours for a different time.
okay, well, I didn't know So did you start, so did you, so you my friend just got a job as yeah, she was like for the your volunteer experience, and she's like, I was on third
Yeah, they always have her picture the credit.
so you, but I related it to
I know, but I'm also like, I'm not a big fan of tons of people being around the table because
I don't know what else to do here. Because, first of all, there's six and Kendall is sitting here and they
but it's so,
yeah, I
well, I'm teaching the
yeah, I saw that like one was like philosophy, that's your favorite.
Dr. Garnett give you tickets.
And then the body class is like your goals and your experience.
That's right.
So that's why I ended up signing up for, I did the research instead. And I had to do the research one instead.
Okay, well, so you're going up for Sean. Okay, great. Yep, I'll write it down right now. Okay. Yeah, okay.
Yes. But it's only 2 days a week, it's 4 weeks. Okay, we're about ready to roll on this force field analysis. Now, in that length of time, I don't think you probably solved the parent-teacher conference problem you started on. If you did, you had a problem that probably didn't need a force field analysis. Force field analysis is something where you're sitting and chewing on it for a while and really thinking about it. But my question is what did you find out by doing that, as opposed to just sitting and talking with somebody saying, you know what, I think we ought to change conferences, and he says what he thinks, and what does force field analysis add or subtract to the process that you saw?
It formalizes it, I mean, it makes you really kind of outline the pros, the cons.
It's kind of like when you make that thing where you go pro and con, so forth. And so in a way it is, but the problem with cons is like, that's different in a way than saying the restraining, because pros and cons are kind of static.
there were so many groups involved, like to think about all of them.
stakeholders
Yeah,
in the change.
yeah, and it just kind of ripples out, and always there's one you forgot, oh, I forgot their dog, you know, I mean, there's always one out there that, you know, as I was doing the hybrid pieces going from one to the other, what I forgot is that there would be some people, the question I asked tonight, that were still in the master's program, but were also in the doctorate program. Those crossover people had an issue that I'd never ever thought about. So yeah, and unless you continually look at it, it can be kind of two-dimensional. But other thoughts about it?
I just kind of looked at it as like we were kind of almost wishing we knew more about what exactly the goal of the plan was, because the better defined it was, the
Yeah, and it was your problem.
the easier it would be to figure out what the pros and cons are.
And guess what? It would be much easier to do in a primary private school than it would be to do in a public school system that has 4 high schools. You know, I mean, so size of complexity matters with it. What I was hoping that you could kind of start to see with it is that when you have an issue, that if we just sit and talk on it, very often we start griping. We kind of go back into the, oh, ain't it awful stuff, you know? Why did we have to do this? What, you know, we kind of, and this kind of focuses you on the arrow, where do I want to go? It's not, the arrow's not back, what's wrong with where we've been? It's where do we want to go? So that's one of the reasons I say force field analysis is helpful. Another is that when I said this, I tried to find something that you had probably some feelings about. You know, I mean, if I were going to ask you about whether or not we should have arena football in Lincoln, Nebraska, you probably could figure a force field analysis on that because you don't really care. If they have it, that's nice. And if they don't have it, that's okay too. When you're engaged emotionally in something, it is much tougher because it's your image and your reputation and your trustworthiness and all of those things that are, I mean, even when it's something like when I said it was my stated goal to switch the program to a hybrid program. If it had fallen flat on its face, I'd have fallen flat on my face too. So being able to step back and talk about forces and what's for and what's against and how can we move those things, we can't get rid of them, but how can we move them in certain ways, also helps you have that balcony view where it's not, they don't want to have a hybrid program because they don't like me. You know, if they liked me, they'd do what I told them to do. You know, that's not what it's about. It's not about you. It's all about you, but it's not about you. We'll talk about how that works. But it's about being able to have enough emotional distance so that you're able to do something about it. And hopefully, the last final thing that you saw with that is you came up with some different things. It wasn't, so often we land on, oh, let's try this. And we stick with it. Oh, that didn't work. We throw that in the garbage can. Oh, let's do this. Oh, that didn't work. And that's when we get those change resistors who say, okay, now what are you going to do? Oh, well, we'll throw that away the next year too. So that you can be a little more pragmatic in being able to move things forward in a meaningful and purposeful way. However, when we're talking about those barriers over there, again, you have to stop and think what they are. The 4 types of barriers are outdated systems. Yeah, my little card's going around for attendance, you know, outdated system. Outdated procedure. Have a child get up from their classroom and lose their instruction to do it. Outdated people. People who said, this is the better way of doing it. I don't understand that computer. I'm going to be stressed by learning that new computer, or a combination of them. And you have to kind of identify, because very often we identify the wrong thing. We think it's the people when it's really the system, or we think it's the system when it's the people. very often it's a combination of the two, that the people are used to the system unless they are trained on what the new system is and why it works and how it works, and they feel confident with it. The people aren't really outdated. It's the system that was. They just haven't been brought up to date with what it is. So why do people resist change? Well, there's a lot of reasons that they resist it, but the main one is fear. They're afraid that I know what I've got. I may not like it. It may not work very well. You have the old car, and you have to do certain things so that it starts in the morning and so forth. But the fear of the unknown, of getting rid of that car and going buy a new one, oh my gosh, I'm going to be more in debt. It's not going to work as well as what I've got. People are going to think that I think I'm, whatever those things are. It's the fear of it more than the reality of it that causes the resistance. When people face a change, they go through the same stages as people that have a personal loss. They go through grief. I can remember very plainly, and I probably already told you, I can remember going into my principal's office and saying, you know what, if I went down the hallway and said to every teacher, here's $10, here's $10, here's $10, they would say, why isn't it 20? How come you gave it to her? She's not working as hard as I am. They don't just look at the gift and say, oh, isn't this great? Isn't it wonderful? I have $10 that I didn't have before. What I wasn't realizing about the situation is that people naturally have to go through grief, even for stuff they don't like, because they're facing a new and different, a new normal. And they have to get adjusted to that. So it is important to kind of have that space and that time in there. We're going to change the human growth courses that we give to young people in the Omaha public schools. Which did they get? They had anger, didn't they? Could you not predict that a million miles away? Of course they're going to. Even with people that in the end say you're doing the best things for kids, in the end will go through the stages of grief. Now I gave you one, anger. Help me out. You've been through it. What else do we have with grief? Denial. What else? Was there any denial in that? Did you guys see any of the controversy? Was there denial that we needed to do anything different than what we've done? Absolutely. There was denial that it was even needed. What else? Denial, grief, bargaining. There's going to be bargaining that comes up with this. Well, if we do this, then you'd better be able to do that. You can. There's going to be bargaining with that. And it finally, you get to acceptance. But even when you come and say something's good and wonderful, guess what, everybody? Next year, you all get your own iPad. Yay. Great. What are you going to, what's one iPad with 30, there are going to be 35 kids instead of 30 kids to pay for the, you can just hear it. You can just hear it. They'll go through all of those stages no matter what it is. So first of all, you get a thick skin for it in terms of the anger and so forth it's not about me. They aren't angry at me. They think they are, but they aren't angry at me. They're angry at what they're losing. They're angry at that they have to change. They're angry because they're afraid of what's going to happen yet. They're going to try to bargain with me. Okay, we'll start school later if we can have the day before Thanksgiving off. You see that? We can do this if you give that. I'm going to get at least part of what I want out of this situation. In fact, before people begin to resist, and you have this, I don't expect you to ever read it, nor understand it as a flow chart. But what this says is, this over here at this side says, this is when people discover that something's going to change. And this over here is when they decide they're gonna dig in their heels and not do it. What this is saying is that you have some spaces and places between those two behaviors, and sometimes you have just a blink of an eye, so you better know about it ahead of time. That you can actually go in and make it be less likely that they resist. For example, one of the reasons that people react badly to a change is they're afraid of their own skills and abilities. So before I told everybody they were going to get a new iPad, if for some reason we'd had a staff development day and they had to use the iPads to do it, and it was engaging and exciting, and probably would have taken my announcement better, because that their own fear of their lack of their own skills and abilities would have been less. They would have had their own a little more confidence with it. They also would want to know what risks there are. If you give me an iPad, what are you expecting out of me? Okay, what do I risk? Am I going to be seen differently? Is there different things that I'm not good at that all of a sudden are going to show up? When in the process do you want to stop the resistance? Well, it's partially in that area, but the other one is what's over here on the left. And I know it's complex, but basically what it says is right there at the top is emotional reaction. If you can stop the emotional reaction, the fear, you can lessen it, you are going to also lessen the resistance. What happens very often is the announcement is made and the leaders are shocked that people are reacting, and so they have to go around and clean up the resistance afterwards. Whereas, because when people are more likely to say no is once they have verbally committed to no. There is a good reason why I said you had to have something in your folder tonight. I don't care if it's 2 sentences saying this is what I think I'm going to do and this is why I'm going to do it. You have now told me that that's what you're going to do. You're going to feel a little more responsibility to be actually going out there and reading the articles and getting some stuff going on that. Same things of no. If I say how many people are going to do this and people raise their hand, guess what? The people that didn't raise their hand just committed to a no. They're going to be 10 times harder to change. I'm not going to ask how many people want to do this. Because I don't want to know, I don't want to have people say yes and no, because when they say no, I'm going to have a hard time getting them over to my yes. So when I want people to commit, then I turn that on its head. You know those teachers that aren't doing their smart boards? If you could get that teacher that's doing their smart board to say, I'm going to do a smart board lesson for when next parent night. You can get them to say that they have verbally in front of others committed. I mean, that's the way AA works, that's the way Weight Watchers work, that's all those kinds of things. When you're verbally committing in front of your peers, you do it, or you don't do it. So if I'm doing something controversial, I am not going to ask people, I'm not going to do a survey on it to see whether you like it or not. Because if you say, I hate it, and I'm going to do it anyway, why did I ask you?
I have a question on how this applies to, like, if you, when you change over from like a principal you've had for a long time to a new principal, it really hits home, like the change idea. But if you're the principal,
Right.
Coming in as the new principal, how do you effectively make those changes? And help your staff accept the changes? 'Cause,
First of all, you realize if you've been in a staff where the principal before has not been trusted for whatever reason, that you're not going to be trusted either. So you don't go home crying the second week when you say, I told them and they don't believe me, and we're going to do better, guys, and they just go back in their classrooms and grumble about me, and they treat me like the last person even though I'm good. I mean, part of it is your own understanding that trust takes a long time to build. What you have going for you, though, is you're the new person, you also have a honeymoon. You know, there's also, okay, what's she all about? Does she really mean what she says? And they, just like the kids with the first day of school, they start testing, so do the adults. So the more transparent you are, the more that you can stand by the word you say. And I can remember one of my crutches that I leaned on was, I'm hearing what you're saying. We are not going to be doing that because of this and this and this, but I will keep it in mind when other things come along. But I'm telling you right now, no. As a first year administrator, they tried. I was a teacher the year before, and so all my friends and everybody were now my employees that I'm working with, and now, and some of them thought that they had the inside track because, you know, we were buddies. And I had to tell them no, just like anybody else along the way, or they try to manipulate you and try to get you to move over to their side without really realizing what you're doing. And I had a teacher come in who wanted to do something that was just between us ridiculous. I mean, it was just ridiculous. But it would make her life easier and make everybody else's life worse. And she started talking, and I said, no. I said, no, we're not going to do this because it will do this and this and this for you. Now help me explain how I'm going to stand in front of the faculty and tell this teacher this is going to happen, this teacher this is going to happen, this teacher this is going to happen. And if that happens with you, then all of your specialness is worn off, and you got to wait for all those other people to have their special time. You got to take the short end of the stick. Are you willing to take the short end of the stick for the next 28 times before it comes around to you again? And she's mad at me. Slammed the door. She walked out. Walked past the secretary and said, "That case says no a lot." But when she says no, she tells you why, and you know she won't tell the next person something different. I thought it was the best compliment I ever got. Did I get to hear the comment, if the secretary hadn't been kind to me and walked in, guess what, she just said? I'd have been like, oh, she's down there in the teacher's lounge throwing things and saying, you know, what a horrible person. And she probably was. But what I also know is when she said, she didn't let me do this and this, all the other teachers are going, oh, that's awful, and they're going, you know, you didn't get your way. And when she went down there and did that, the rest of them thought, well, I'm not going to go down there and try that. That didn't work. It's like the kids, you know, they test you, pretty soon that didn't work anymore. Back to what your question is it's all about relationship, and nothing happens in the first 3 months except that if you say yes to the first person, no to the second person, you know, you're arbitrary, you're all over the place. Even if your answer is, I don't know, I need to check more about this, you're going to have to let me check with people and get back to you on that, is better than people think when they walk in that they're supposed to be the authority of no and be able to say the yeses and the nos. And a lot of times the answer is, that's interesting, thank you for bringing that to my attention. I didn't say I was going to do anything about it. That's interesting. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Wonderful set of sentences. I mean, I'm going to do anything.
You mentioned earlier staff being resistant to change because so many changes have come before it. And so the answer was...
Never happened to you, though, did it?
Yeah, well, it's a big problem in our staff right now. But and the principal kind of gets thrown in the middle of it, but it's not his fault. He's been here for 25, 30 years. The problem is we've had
your middle
superintendents
management
in 6 years.
And that's that. You know, everybody. Remember this the thing I said about the horses on the merry-go-round. You always think the one in front of you is the boss, you know, and then you look around and you go, oh, look, the people are following me. Everybody's in the middle. Everybody's in the middle. You think, well, the superintendent gets to say whatever she wants to say. No, they don't. They have to go with what the school board says. The school board gets to say whatever. No, they don't. They have to be voted in again. Everybody has always got somebody that they have to answer for. And it is really hard to stand up and say, guess what? We are now going to do daily testing of our children. And you know inside it's the worst thing that they've ever done in the entire world. Now, you got some choices. Are you going to pretend like, woohoo, guys, and pretend that you're for something that you're really against? Are you going to say, you know what, we have to do this, it's really stupid, but we've got to do it, so just get it done and go on and do what you know is right for kids. And that gets back to them in central office, of course it does. And in the meantime, you also have to do something that Covey calls being loyal to the absent. You see, if I go and I talk to him about you, and we're having this conversation, and I'm talking about, oh, he's not a very good student. I keep picking on you this semester. I'll never sit in this front place again. What's going on in his mind is, what is she saying about me when I'm not here? So the same thing is true. If I'm up here saying it's a great idea or it's a horrible idea, they're like, okay, what do they say? What's she saying about us when she's other places? I mean, so you know, you have to be Solomon all the time. In fact, after my first year of being an administrator, I went on vacation with my family and I said, I don't care where we go, what we stop, what we eat, what we're going to do at any time. Don't ask me. I am taking my vacation from saying yes or no to anything. I will eat sand if that's what everybody's doing. But I do not want to say, is it McDonald's or Burger King? Not me. So McDonald's makes decisions for 3 days and I don't have to make one. Because I felt like that's what I was doing all the time. And I was like thinking about, oh, well, it's like being a first year teacher where you're having to figure out behavior management, planning, and time management and all those things at the same time. Pretty soon it becomes just who you are, and they know who you are, and you know who they are, and it becomes natural, and you don't sit there and look at yourself in the mirror in the morning going, what am I going to say today? I never really lie. I never out and out lie to my faculty because it's just like dogs and kids. Teachers can send a lie from a million miles away. If I think it's bad and it's good, or I think it's good and it's bad, they can tell that I'm got the cognitive dissonance stuff going on. So I've got to find a way in a lot of those cases to do something else, like let go of something else there. I understand this is a new thing that we're all having to do together. I understand it's going to take some time. I understand that the objectives of it are kind of murky, but I trust that you're going to be able to find some objectives that fit with what we really do for kids around here with this. To give you some more time from that, you no longer are going to be doing this and this and this over here. We'll figure out some other way. And you can't always do that, but there isn't any one good answer to any of these things. But the bad answer is to try to pretend or bully your way through, or do what the last person did. Any of those things are bad ideas.
That's interesting.
They hired you to be you. They hired you to be you. They didn't hire you to be that last person. They didn't hire you to be the superintendent. Sometimes you wish they did. Most of the time you're glad they didn't. But being aware of some of these things, reading people's emotions, knowing ahead of time that's going to be a hot button that we press. I mean, there is no way when they started talking about sex education that they didn't know that was going to be the top line in the World Herald the next day, even if it was just in a committee meeting that nobody attended. You don't get that far in life and not know where some of the minefields are. The trouble is sometimes when it's something that you think you're doing good and they come and say, you aren't treating us fairly. It comes from the left field. And sometimes you just got to pull the weeds. There are times when people, and I was going by and they were teaching that first level of classroom management to college kids here. And I wanted to open up the door and yell and go, listen to her. You think they're all going to love you, but they won't. They'll love you if you make them behave. You know, but the thing is, I know what they'll do as first-year teachers. They'll think, oh, you know, he's texting over there. If I just kind of ignore it, maybe it'll stop. You know, this thing's happening over here that I don't really like. I'm going to pretend I don't see it. I'm going to teach real hard over this way, and maybe, you know, It's just like when we were talking about the snipers. What's the lowest thing that you accept is what's acceptable for everybody. If you accept somebody to say something rude, there's nothing more important that you taught that day except that you taught that. Same thing is true. When people, if you said everybody's turning their report in on Friday, and you allow someone to not turn their report in on Friday, it's okay for everybody not to turn their report in on Friday. And by the way, back in my classroom management days, if it's okay on Friday, it's okay on Tuesday too. There's nothing magic about Friday. You wear those clothes on Friday. What makes Tuesday magic that you can't wear those clothes? If it's okay to have gum chewing day for a reward for bringing money for United Way, gum chewing's okay. Because if it's okay on Friday, there was nothing magic about Friday. That following Monday, we would give you a in-school suspension for doing the same behavior. So don't make your rewards or your punishments arbitrary, because then you become arbitrary too. Oh yes, you can wear your cut-off khaki clothes on Funny Clothes Day, teachers. But the next week, if you wear them, we'll send you home. Really? Aren't you the same teacher teaching the same kids the same subject on Friday that you're teaching the next Tuesday? But I love cut-off khaki day. What do you mean? You mean you're not going to allow me to have cut-off khaki day in my class? Right, that's right. I'm not. It's right if it's right and it's wrong if it's wrong. How can I possibly send you home the next Tuesday for behavior that was right the day before? How can I do that? How do I build trust when it's okay, because you did this little cutesy thing, you get this little cutesy prize, but I'm going to but they're not going to see it that way. They're going to see it that you're withholding it from them the rest of the days. It isn't that I got to have gum on Friday. It's every other day you're keeping me from having gum. So the weeds are the weeds. If gum's wrong, it's always wrong. And you go after it. And if it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter, and you don't go after it. Bigger change, the same thing. If you let people, you say everybody has to be at work at 8:30 in the morning or 6:30 in the morning or whatever it is, and that person comes in consistently 10 minutes late, you have just made a message to everybody else. And that person's got to come in on time or they'll choke off the whole, pretty soon everybody will be coming in and whenever they feel like it. Lead with Speed talks about the idea that we like to start things like jumping in the cold water, you know, the swimming pool. There's the people that put in their toe, and then they put in their ankle, and they get, oh, it's cold, and they get a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. And then there's people that jump off the diving board head first, and they're in. This says jump off the diving board for two reasons. One is, who's colder, the kid that jumped off the diving board and got it over with, or the kid that's sitting there and thinking about it minute after minute after minute as they're doing it? If you're going to do it, do it. The other thing is, so if you get in, start dipping your toe in the pool and you don't like it very well, you never will jump in. Many years ago, I went to the powers that be at that time. They're all retired now, so I can talk about it. At the Omaha Public Schools and said, elementary planning time is for the birds. You've got these 10 cycle days. The day after Thanksgiving, we have no idea. Mother of a second grader has no idea whether to give them the violin, the gym shoes. My art teacher shows up at the wrong building on that day too because she can't remember which cycle the day. It makes no sense. What's so magic about you need 10 days? I showed him on a calendar that you could switch it down to 5 days by saying the day before Thanksgiving we'll run a Monday calendar, the day after winter break we'll run a Friday calendar. You know, you could even up by running a strange calendar on 5 days, and then the rest of the days would be equal. Well, how did those cycle days ever came in? Well, cycle days came in because there was a negotiated item that elementary teachers needed to have. They were way short compared to secondary teachers of plan minutes. So they've said you have to have 400 minutes in 10 days. Now, if they had said you had to have 200 minutes in 5 days, it never would have happened. But they said you could have 400 minutes in 10 days. So you could have a whole bunch in one day and then have no plan minutes for the next 3 days and and they said to us at that time, we understand that we don't have as many plan minutes as the secondaries people, but what we will do is you're going to get 400 minutes. Second grade teachers, I don't know how it is. Second grade teachers get music 3 times in 10 cycles. Is that still happening? Anybody up here?
It's all even now.
It's
this
all
year.
even. Woo!
Yeah.
And third graders get this, okay, it took them years and years. And you're like, wait a minute, when's that magic day gonna come? I'm still teaching 6th grade and I get an extra PE, but 5th grade gets an extra library, and they never did anything about it. Why? Because they had to hire a whole bunch of extra PE and library and so forth to make those things happen. And they would have to, how was it? They would, to make it all be even at the first, for what they had, they would have had to hire almost double music teachers, but they had too many librarians. So they didn't do it. It never happened. And hopefully it's better now, but they still have 10 cycle days, don't they?
Mhm.
Still does that?
Now guidance is a special, so that's.
Oh,
how they got
good.
around it, yeah. For some schools.
Interesting.
That compromise thing.
Again, if they'd have started out and said, you know what, you need 500 days, 500 minutes, everybody needs to have 100 minutes every day, but bit the bullet and hired the 10 more music teachers that they needed or whatever it was, we wouldn't have had all the messing around that we had for years. Here's a story that kind of says why you need to start with speed. There was a man who bought a fixer-upper. And he said, you know what, that really took all my money to buy this fixer-upper, so over the next 5 years, I'm going to plot out and say each year what I'm going to do so that at the end of 5 years, I'm going to have a nice house. And the realtor said, no. Immediately fix everything. Even if you have to make your loan a little bit bigger or whatever, fix it immediately. He said, no. I am a together person. I will spread it out over time. Okay. And she said, no, you won't, because after 6 months, you get used to it. You'll get used to stepping over the dead body in the living room. Now, she didn't really mean that, but that creaky door that you have to jiggle the handle to make it work, pretty soon, that's what you do. You jiggle the handle to make the thing work. I've told this story for 10 years. 4 years ago, I built a house. One of the things I did in my house was up in my upstairs, I bought this big, beautiful wall hanging that's in the shape of a tree, and I was going to put pictures of all my family from my family tree. It still has other people's families' pictures in it. Why? Because I walk by it, and it's wallpaper, and I don't notice, and I'm sure that one of these days people are going to go, who are these people? Yeah, wow, what an interesting family, and they're so attractive. Yeah, but anyway, you get used to whatever it is. Even when it's not the way you need it to be, you get used to it. I learned that by giving teachers their schedules. I did scheduling at one point I did schedules for 13 elementary buildings. And I knew those buildings well enough. I knew what worked well where and so forth. But when I would go to that building and they would want me to go to a faculty meeting and hand the papers out, and I refused to do it. Because what happens when you hand the schedules out? Oh, this will never work. We have lunch and then we have science. We can't have science right at this. Now, what happens by the 3rd week of school? That's the way it is. They're fine with it. No big deal. So what I would do is I would go and I'd think, oh, you know what? This year, the 2nd grade is going to have the last period of the day reading. Somebody has to have it. And it's going to be you this year. But to do that, I did give you last recess. And so I'd always have that. And next year you won't. I promise, next year you won't have last reading. And I would trade it around. And I know it ahead of time. So you can see a lot of change comes in the planning of the person ahead of time. A lot of it does. A lot of it comes by doing what you say you're going to do and doing what you ask them to do. You don't ask people to come to work early and then drive in late. You just, and you say, well, that's obvious, but you've worked for somebody that does that type of thing. Everybody's going to do this, except me, type of thing. So as a leader, you have to look to yourself once again. It comes back to all the stuff we did earlier in the class. You first got to get yourself. You can change yourself and influence others. It is all about you. When you want to make a change, you look in the mirror and see where are my strengths? What can I make happen? How can I make the environment different so it happens better for the people around me? And then you show by your own example first. And you don't ask them to join you, you just do it. Albert Schweitzer was an extremely well-known, like a Mother Teresa type of person. Everybody listened when he spoke. He came to town one day, and they all went to the train station to meet him with big banners, welcome, Dr. Schweitzer, like bigger than when the Pope would come, that type of a thing. And he got off the train, and instead of walking over and shaking hands with the mayor and getting flowers from the, Miss whatever of the town and so forth, instead of doing that, he walked to the back of the train car, helped an elderly lady off the train, went over and got her suitcases for her and put her in a taxi, and then he walked over to the mayor. Didn't have to say a word, did he? He walked the walk. He was what he wanted others to be. So they asked him if leading by example was the most important thing that he could do as a leader. And he said, no, it's not the most important one. It's the only one. Because they're watching. And when you can't live up to whatever it is, you explain. Sometimes it's confidential. I'll say, I can't tell you why this is happening right now because I'm keeping confidentiality. But I'm aware it's happening, and I know it's not looking the way to you right now. But understand, I'm handling it, but I'm handling it in a confidential manner. I would do the same for you. Accountability starts at home. If you're in charge of keeping other people accountable, the number one person to keep accountable is yourself. I don't expect you to go out and buy this book. But when you get rich, this is a good one to have. The question behind the question deals about the question that you ask, but what do you really mean? What do you really mean when you say that? What does it really mean? It's back to that self-serving bias. It's easy to pass the buck. It's easy to say it's somebody else's fault. It's easier to say the sun was in my eyes, the superintendent made me do it, whatever the reason is. Personal accountability starts with it's nobody else, it's my responsibility. Now, I don't necessarily have to take the blame for everything. When somebody comes in angry to my office, I don't say, I'm sorry, it's my fault. I'm sorry that's happened to you. Apology, they heard that I have some empathy for them, but I don't necessarily have to be the kicking end of everything that went on. But you want something to happen, you got to be the somebody. You got to be the somebody. So you've got a lot of things here on change. You've got a lot more resources. There are 2 articles that I would say one of the 2 would be important to kind of learn. One of them comes from John Cotter, which is his 8 ways of doing change. It's the 8 mistakes people make. The other one's by Michael Fullen, which he has a change framework. One of them will make more sense to you. But that's the article to have in your notebook someplace, that when you're in the middle of a mess, to say, I need to take a step back and think about how I can do things differently, that you can start to say, you know what, I really need to get that preaching to the choir together. I've got to get those people that do know how to do the smart boards together and talk to them about what's working and why it's working before I ever start to go after those ones that aren't. So one of those pathways is helpful to you. Finally then, the one thing that I think you ought to have with you is the thing that looks like this. And it's the front of your handout, and it's where I'm going to leave you with tonight. When you're in a mess, and you're in a complex change, usually you're feeling one of these things. You're feeling confused, anxious, the change is happening too slow, you're frustrated, or it seems like it's good for a while and then it kind of fizzles. Usually those are the things that happen. This is an interesting chart to talk about why that happens, what's missing. You see, if your people are confused, they don't have the vision of what's happening, what's supposed to be happening. I don't know whether it's good or bad, I'm confused with what's going on. If what's happening is that people are feeling anxious, they probably think they're in fear. I don't have the stuff, I don't know how, I can't. If the change is very gradual, there's probably little reason to change. It's back to that urgency. There's no urgency to change. And by the way, incentives can be fear of punishment as easy as it is getting a prize. When people are frustrated, it's because they know what to do, they know how to do it, they want to do it, they got the incentives to do it, but they don't have the resources, and it drives them crazy, because if they just had the resources, they could do it. And if they know what to do and how to do it, they've got the resources, but nobody's keeping things in some type of a plan. It seems like things are going left, and then they're going right. You get the false starts. So that's one way of working with it. The other way is now to say, I got a change coming up. I want to change my building to, instead of being a 5-8 building, it's going to be a grade 6 to 8 building. And there's going to be a lot of changes that come with that. What's the vision for that? Why are we doing it? What skills are going to change for the building, for the teachers, for the parents, for the children when I change that configuration of the building? What incentives can I give to faculty, to paras, to bus drivers, to students, to whatever, to make this change be more successful? What resources do I need? Do I need an extra teacher? Do I need one less coach? Do I need to have, I'm going to have more children of the same age, so do I need more sections of some things and less of others? What do I need? And what's the plan of when it's going to happen, who's going to do it, what's going to happen with it? So you can also use it proactively to prepare for that change that's coming. You can use it reactively to say, this is the stuff that's happening, where are we falling short? Of all the things that I've done with change, I think this is the most powerful. I used to teach women I would get a room full of women from Afghanistan that were teachers, but they were teaching to become principals, and they would want me to teach them. And they would say things to me like, do you have gangs? Do they kill your teachers because they're teachers? What do you do when a teacher hasn't been paid for 6 months? I didn't know what to do with the problems that they were having, but they turned to me eventually and said, you know what, you don't have to give us the answers. You just have to show us how we can solve our own problems. I certainly couldn't. But this resonated with them. They could see where they lacked resources. When was it resources? When was it skills? When was it that the vision was cloudy? What was going on? To the place where my 4th or 5th group came to me, and they came carrying a book. I thought, well, that's nice, this group is really bringing me a good book. I'm always working with an interpreter, I can't understand them. They're all just beaming. They hand me the book. And I start opening up, they're like, no, no, no. Of course, it's in Dari. Turned over the back, front, the back. So now I'm at the back of the book, and I'm starting to go through, and about the 5th page, I turn and go out, and here comes this. It's all in Dari. And there it is. And I turn the next page, and there's the arrow. It's my book. The only book on school leadership that's given to school leaders in Afghanistan, Iran, or Pakistan came from the women that sat in the classroom here and listened to this stuff. Took it home, assimilated it, wrote it as a book, and now it is handed out to people that are becoming school leaders. You never know where your change is going to go. I mean, I think if it goes from here to here, it's a miracle. But you have no idea what change you caused today. And you never know where it may be 100 years after we're all dead that it matters. You don't know what child you said the right thing to today. You don't know what teacher you sparked an idea in. But when you do it purposefully, when you're trying to do it, that's when you really want to up the ante on what's going on. And we do. We do it all the time. We do it well. So, I'll see you on the internet. I didn't bring my case. I feel like it's trick or treat. Whatever the next blank page is, makes me happy. Yeah, yep, very likely. I like to do that, bring things back around. I mean, that's a purposeful thing. No, I did it